The Separation of Species Through Early Human Art and Culture by Kelli Thompson. The emergence of art is a significant and crucial point in human evolution. Art separates humans from all other animals, as it is proof of higher cognitive function and abstract thought. The evolution of art coincides with the increasingly more advanced thinking of early human ancestors. From these examples, the culture in which these artistic creations were made can be better understood, which allows for interpretation of the early art and the weight it carries. Art is a determining factor in the distinction between humans and other primates. In order to explore art, it should have a clear and solid definition. The modern interpretation of art covers everything that art has evolved into in the contemporary world, including music, dance, painting, drawing, bodily adornments, and more. This broad array of mediums makes it difficult to decipher art from years past because we do not have any cultural information to which the art can connect. Did early humans intend to create something with meaning beyond practicality or pure instinct when they danced? To look at art from a scientific viewpoint, the evolution of the brain of a species, the art under question should be clearly seen as art by the ones who created it. Otherwise, it would be too subjective to provide any substantial findings. Does art have form? Can a few chicken scratches on a seashell be considered art? For the purpose of clarity, when examining art without context, I define art as anything purposely and methodically made outside practical purposes. Works such as hand paintings in caves are easy to see as art. Paint and pigments are applied to decorate a surface. No matter if the intention is spiritual, ritual, or purely aesthetic, it is art. Lines carved into a seashell are more difficult to determine because the intentions of the artist are unclear. What if the early human ancestors, referred to as hominins, who made those carvings were only doing so to test out sharp stones they were working with? The intentions and cultural backgrounds are not apparent. Nevertheless, I will include anything that could be considered the beginnings of art, as art did not start with someone going off into a cave and creating a masterpiece. It began as a slow process of humans being inspired to gradually step away from practical creations such as tools and merge into the more aesthetic and symbolic things. To narrow down the broad range in which art encompasses today, I will not be discussing music, language, or dancing. Rather, I will interpret the deliberate mark-making such as paintings, carvings, and sculpture, as I believe these evolved differently than other forms of art, such as dancing and language. Art originally developed from tools that were becoming increasingly ornamental or aesthetic, with the first ones being made from green lava and smooth pink pebbles, approximately 2.5 million years ago. Around this time, there is evidence of early human ancestors carrying around things other than tools for no practical purpose. While the hominins did not do anything to these objects for them to be considered a work of art, they are pretty things, which shows an interest in the aesthetic. Hominins during this time period were known as Homo habilis, the first hominin close enough to Homo sapiens to be considered within the genus Homo. Other examples of specialized tools are spearheads, specifically crafted so the stone had an embedded fossil in the center of the flat side of the spear, created 250,000 years ago. These examples could be considered the earliest forms of art, as they mark the beginning of thought beyond simple survival or functionality. The first art, apart from decorated tools, were carvings. One discovery of carvings made into seashells suggests that these carvings could be as old as 500,000 years old. Researcher Eugene Dubois found a mollusk shell with several deep, angular scratches that created a geometric, almost zigzag pattern across the outside of the shell. While these scratches are distinct and deliberate, the intentions of the maker are not clear. It does not seem to be of any symbolic significance. However, it is so substantial because it was created by Homo erectus, a primitive species whom scientists did not think were capable of creating such marks. Additionally, approximately 100,000 years ago, there were more clearly defined marks on bones, varying in shapes and contour. This marks the beginning of symbolic expression. From scratches on shells and bones, we move on to more clearly representational and artistic expressions of the early hominins. The oldest rock art was found in Africa and was created 75,000 years ago. Around 70,000 years ago, stylistic differentiations of artifacts were emerging between the differing hominin groups and around the world. Blum hypothesizes that this major jump in artistic representation could be due to a genetic variant associated with the changing brain functions that appeared, which allowed for better survival advantages, which made the hominins more intelligent, leading to a surge in art. Dissignac presents another theory. She states that due to the needs for survival surrounding food, hunter-gatherers needed to be interdependent. Finding food when food is not readily available would require more complex thinking, as they would learn to think ahead to what they would need in the future. This kind of intelligence allows for the ability to learn, remember, and understand. As the hominins got better at finding and maintaining a food supply, they would inevitably have more leisure time. That, combined with the now evolutionary increase in intelligence, would cultivate an environment in which curiosity and creativity were sparking, leading to amplified artistic behavior and thinking. Lastly, we move on to the more advanced forms of art, cave paintings and sculptures. Hand stencils are considered to be the first style of painting. It is a technique in which the artist places their hand firmly against a rock face and blows pigment onto the hand, creating a negative painting of the hand. The earliest dated hand paintings are from 39,900 years ago and were created in caves in Indonesia. These incredibly old paintings survived the transitional years between the Middle and Upper Paleolithic periods and mark the true beginnings of art as we know it today. In the same cave, next to the oldest hand stencil in the world, is a depiction of a pig painted 35,400 years ago. Figurative paintings of real animals and people mark a huge jump in the artistic ability, and therefore solidifies the intelligence of the hominins who formed them. While there is little known about the cultural interactions of the hominins who created these works of art, information can be inferred from the location, tools, and depictions shown through these works of art, especially in cave paintings. The early artists would travel through complex and dangerous caves to reach a transcendent space to begin their work. Evidence found in these caves suggests that they would have their assistants carry decorated torches and stone lamps, fueled by animal fat and moss or pine needles. They would also bring a pestle to grind the pigments and paints made up of iron oxides in the colors of red and yellow. Manganese dioxide and charcoal made of burned wood were used for black outlines, and kaolin and mica for white. Brushes made of animal hairs were used along with the artist's fingers to paint. Although primitive compared to the many works that can be seen today, the high-quality art was not seen as a lowly pastime. Rather, it was a trained skill. The previously discussed stylistic differences in the hominin groups attest to this. Many paintings show not only the use of paints to portray animals and other forms, but also the contours and formation of the cave itself to create the images. The artists would plan the pre-existing cracks, bumps, and fissures to fit into the final painting. The difficult and perilous placement of his paintings suggests that they were to be revered and sacred places. Many anthropologists believe that the artists saw their paintings as spiritual, both figuratively and or literally. Whether the cave walls were just a physical separation from the spiritual world, or that the depiction of literal forms somewhat captured their physical counterparts, the paintings may have been an attempt to communicate the spiritual element. Theories as to the nature of the communication are widely varied. Some claim that the shamans or artists were attempting to entice, appease, or atone for killing the animals depicted. Some also suggest that the artists may have believed that they could magically acquire the abilities of the depicted animals, as many of them were predators. One interesting aspect of this is that it strongly suggests a sense of empathy with the animals, which carried into their interactions with other humans. Creating a literal representation of something in the real world carried a hefty weight in the culture of the early Homo sapiens. This may have been the reason for the incredible lack of violence in all depictions. The most graphic a painting would become was two animals locking horns. There was never death or even bloodshed in the early depictions of animals, leading Blum to hypothesize that the portrayal of violence was prohibited. Interestingly, the depictions of humans was also taboo. It suggested that the culture believed that the forms represented through the art could capture the subject matter, possibly endangering them through magical control, possession, or destruction. Blum psychoanalyzes the paintings to better understand the culture of the artists. He states that, contrary to popular belief, the artists of these monumental paintings were not just men. Evidence of women creating art in these caves is evidence through the hand and finger marks formed. Art created by women and men may even vary in meanings due to the differing perspectives and roles that they played. Women may have painted female genitalia and other birth-oriented forms to magically ensure pregnancy and reproduction. Sculptures were one of the only mediums in which a human figure was depicted. Many of these are believed to represent a fertility goddess, pertaining to the power of creation that females hold. The ability to reproduce art is a uniquely human trait. Although studies have been done on chimpanzees to see if they too can create art, it could be argued that this is not due to their abilities, but rather the interactions between the chimpanzees and humans that allowed them to recreate art. Nevertheless, human ancestors were the first to show the ability to create art. This, as well as other reasons, is how humans have differentiated themselves from other primates in evolutionary history. Anthropologists determine where the term primate stops and hominin begins. Once again, a hominin is a bipedal human ancestor that does not include apes. Three important factors for separating humans from apes and chimpanzees are bipedalism, encephalization, and associated culture and tools. Bipedalism is the ability to walk on 2 feet. This transition allowed hominins to freely use their hands for tools and eventually included art making. Encephalization is the study of the head, or more specifically, the brain. Overall, as hominins evolved, their brains got bigger, as did the portion of the brain dedicated to higher, more advanced thinking. This also led to the ability to express abstract thought through art. Finally, the last determining factor is associated culture and tools. As discussed previously, the innovation that came with toolmaking opened a new path for creativity, branching off into multiple forms for art, including carving, painting, and sculpture. Art allows anthropologists to understand and decipher the culture in which it was created. Inferring information from the art itself and the location puts it into a cultural context which we would not have otherwise. Demonstrating the ability to clearly distinguish early members of the genus Homo from all other animals, art has proved to be an invaluable asset to anthropologists. The complex and abstract thought that goes into art making is a testament to the abilities of our early ancestors. Art's personal, raw, even sacred nature has preserved the thoughts of people living tens of thousands of years ago, left for us to decode and understand.